present for all of our director's lecture sessions, the first Saturday of every month. He takes that information and beams it up to satellite. He's the one who has put over 300 episodes, creation episodes, that we recorded at the Creation Evidence Museum on the web. That's one reason I retired from TBN. David Lyons has been a real friend. He now is so proficient, we have to talk very little after he records the sessions, edits them, and puts them up on the web. Because of his work, you can take a tour through the entire Creation Evidence Museum. A 3-minute tour of this display, and then we go to the next one. He has recorded all of these. Once in a while I talk a little longer than 3 minutes, most of the time. But you can go through the entire museum and get all of the instruction on our website at creationevidence.org. Creationevidence.org, and you log on over 300 episodes plus the entire creation model Dave has put on our website. So in increments, how long are those?
Generally about 10 minutes long.
10 minutes long, and then you catch your breath and say, okay, I want to hear more. But the model is 2.5 hours in length, has over 200 technical and biblical references. I asked him to speak today on a flood. Is a flood capable of expressing all that we find throughout Kansas, Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, in this one shale layer? And then in Colorado, we're working in an layer that extends, it's the red beds, Jurassic, that extends for 11 states and into Canada. And a flood produced that. At Glenrose, 18 feet below the museum, is a layer of limestone that belts the entire globe. From pole to pole and equator to equator, the entire globe is covered with a sedimentary deposit. Can a flood do that? Well, David's going to help us answer that with evidence closer to home so you can get a grasp on that. Would you welcome technician David Lyons?
Yeah, water is amazing, especially when you're really thirsty. Have you ever had the experience of driving along a familiar road and all of a sudden there's a bunch of buildings there that you didn't even know were planned? Imagine waking up and going for a drive and going across what used to be a shallow creek and then coming across a canyon that wasn't there the week before. This is Lake Gorge. It was carved out when a lake overflowed a spillway. And so all of a sudden you have this massive amount of water rushing across the landscape, and it cut through bedrock in just a few days. This was secret for several years. They finally opened it up to tours, and you still have to book a tour to go out there and see it. Or if you're an institution, you can get permits to go out and measure and take pictures and stuff like that. It's in central Texas, but if you look up Canyon Lake, there's some really interesting information on Wikipedia of all places. You wouldn't think of Wikipedia as being exactly a Christian-friendly website, but it says typically a steep-walled narrow gorge is inferred to represent slow, persistent erosion. But because many of the geological formations of Canyon Lake Gorge are virtually indistinguishable from other formations which have been attributed to long-term, slower processes, the data collected from Canyon Lake Gorge lends further credence to the hypothesis that some of the most spectacular canyons on Earth may have been carved rapidly during ancient megaflood events. And that is a quote on Wikipedia, and that is from Nature Geoscience. That's another not necessarily Christian-friendly source. Linda found this reference for me. This is another spillway event. This is Lake Texoma, down on the Red River between Texas and Oklahoma. That's relatively close to our house. And you see that spillway. This spillway is a lot bigger than the spillway on Canyon Lake Gorge. And so when it overflows that much, this was a record year. This was 2015. This is the highest it's ever been. And the engineers were holding their breaths. You see that little dimple? I don't know if you can see it or not in the water. We'll get a closer look at that. That's the whirlpool where the floodgates drain. But this is what it did. This is downstream, carved through the dirt. It carved through several different layers. It broke up this layer, shattered it, scattered it all over the place, and it swept away the road in the process. There's the other end of the road. And it's pretty deep out here. There's another view of some of the layers. Notice how it's broken up this hard layer of limestone into little chunks and tossed them around like they're styrofoam. Water did that. There was nobody down here with a backhoe or anything else. This is that whirlpool. The supervisor of the dam told KXII News that is capable of swallowing a full-size boat and sucking it under. This is where it comes out. This is where the pieces of the boat would be ejected. At this particular event, this thing was running over 40,000 cubic feet per second. Look how violent that is. Look at the energy in that. Now, 40,000 cubic feet per second is actually 300,000 gallons. 300,000 of these things each second. I'm not going to drop this on the floor, but it would hit it pretty hard. This room is about 11,000 cubic feet. I cheated and measured it. And so imagine 4 buildings full of water. If that much water hit this building, there wouldn't even be a greasy spot. The force is just unbelievable. Now, if you take the spillway, add it to the floodgates and the generation output, it added up to over 110,000 cubic feet per second. So downstream, with all this violent water moving down, it did a lot of damage, including taking a bite out of the road that we used to get from Texas to Oklahoma. There was somebody, this was on the news, I don't have that clip, but somebody was standing here videoing across the bridge because they were a little bit afraid to go further out, and it's a good thing they were afraid to go further out. And they caught the road just falling in. Now, here's another canyon. This one's 1982. This is Lake Grapevine. Same scenario. Lake all of a sudden jumps up over a lot of inflow happened all of a sudden, hit the spillway at about the same time. And so the water was like this deep going over a wide spillway. That's a lot of water, and it gets funneled down into a small area. And so you got thousands of cubic feet per second, and it hits the limestone. The limestone just gets out of the way. These are people standing up on the road, where the road used to be. This is a few feet down from where the road surface was. It's actually a pedestal out in the middle. But look at all these little rounded, curved surfaces in here. We'd seen that before. We've seen that in the Grand Canyon. And so in 1982, not having heard the creation message yet, and everything, still, we looked at that new canyon and we thought, this almost looks like the Grand Canyon. Maybe the Grand Canyon didn't take that long to form after all. There's that little pedestal in the middle while this white water was still raging, and there were brave guys or stupid guys, whatever you want to consider them, kayaking in this. This is further downstream. Look at the chunks of limestone thrown around like styrofoam. All these layers that were cut through. Yes, there were fossils found in there, and they broke up big chunks. I'd like to have brought this home, but it weighed more than I could get in the trunk of the car. And yes, there were dinosaur prints found here, as they were also found in Canyon Lake Gorge. Now this is a little bit hard to see because it's blown up from an ancient color slide. But you see this V-shaped thing here? There was a creek running this way, and then this flood came and carved the canyon that way, and so you've got a cross-section of the creek bed. The way this broke up was interesting to me. I didn't quite understand that. Here's Grand Canyon again, showing the similarities with this curved these curves and the circular areas. This may be one reason it does that. Water tends to refuse to go in a straight line. It wants to take little side trips and run around in circles and stuff like that. This is actually my muddy driveway because we will live way out in the country. There's a few more. Now on the surface, on the mud underneath, leaves ripples. And after the water goes down, if I don't drive over those ripples very much, if another layer of mud comes in, those things may just get locked in stone. These are small ones. This is up near Turner Falls area in the Arbuckle Mountains. These are bigger ones in Canada. These are huge ones also in Canada. Ian Juby sent us that picture. Now, what's this got to do with floods? This is the famous or infamous, depending on your point of view, Delk print. Dr. Baugh asked me to take pictures of this, and I went down there, and the first time I saw it, I thought, oh no, this has got to be a fake. It's just too perfect and too convenient and everything else. Because it came to the museum as a loose slab. Now, it was a guy who had worked with archaeologists, and so, he kind of knew what he was doing. He brought that to the museum after having some health problems. And what we have here is a human print, and then a dinosaur stepped over the human print. Okay, I was skeptical, and I was trying to figure out, now how could you fake this? Well, there's a way to find out if it's faked. We went and had it CT scanned, and sure enough, there are density changes underneath that. You can't fake density change. You can't carve density changes into limestone. And you can't make limestone like that. If you could, you'd be a billionaire because you'd have every road construction project there is. Because it's vastly superior to concrete. Now, where was it discovered? This is where the criticism comes in. Because it was brought as a loose slab. It wasn't found in place and measured properly, so that they could identify the layer and everything. However, it was found at a junction of a creek that flows into the Paluxy River. And it was found buried in a mud bank. The creek comes in here. Here's the road that goes over here. There's a concrete bridge here that acts almost as a funnel for this creek. Up here are some pretty steep hills. It is the Texas Hill Country after all. And the creek rushes down here, comes in the straightaway, goes in a couple of gentle curves, and then slams into that bridge. That makes sort of almost like a fire nozzle. So this thing is capable of running at just under 10,000 cubic feet per second. And remember how much that is. It weighs an awful lot. And so it's blasting at the formations right here at this little curve, right before it goes into the river. The mud bank is right here. The mud bank is up over in this area up in the trees, and you can see all the people digging over here because we were going to see if we could find another loose slab or maybe another footprint. You notice this deep hole here. See how the layers are broken out? Here's an aerial picture. They've put dams here now with a series of small lakes to slow this water because they found that makes it a lot less violent. But it would come down here and it would go right under the road under here, racing down this hill. There's another view of it a little bit closer. You can almost see the bridge here. We were working over here and there's the hole. You can see how deep that is and how many layers have been broken off. This is one of the rocks that we took out of there. This was not down in with the other limestone. This was up in the mud bank. It had been shot out of there by the high water pressure and buried in the mud, just like a bullet. This weighs, 300 pounds?
At least.
It's, a couple of strong guys couldn't budge it.
4 minutes to it.
This is the flood data for the Paluxy. It's one of the steepest rivers in Texas, and it can get very violent. A lot of people have been killed in it. As recently as 2007, I think it was, in a flood. There's more. You can see some of these numbers, 60,000 cubic feet, There's just all kinds of events here where that much water could have ejected that footprint.